extensibility and writing more business logic are essential to build mobile apps. That's where Cloud Function comes in handy, where you can write your business logic and run it in a backend. Cloud Functions allow you to run backend code responding to events triggered by Firebase features and HTTP requests. But you may ask, what does this mean? Let me give you two examples. Imagine that your app has a social media style, and if people follow other people, you want to send them push notifications. Another example. Imagine your user uploading a very big size image. That means when you are loading that image to the app, it will take longer to load depending on the internet speed. It will probably not gonna be a good user experience. Then you want to optimize the image and show the proper size, maybe scale it down a bit and show a thumbnail instead to enhance loading content even faster. This is where Cloud Function can be helpful and work closely with other Firebase services. FlutterFlow allows you to write and deploy Firebase Cloud Functions directly within the App Builder dashboard. To write and deploy your function, you should use the integrated code editor and also write it in JavaScript. If you don't know JavaScript, I must admit it's one of the easiest languages you can learn quickly. Though we will not cover teaching the basic of JavaScript in this video. There are several triggers for Firebase Cloud Functions, but 4 might be more important for you. These triggers can include on-call. This is when you explicitly calling the function. In Firebase, HTTP triggers use the post method, allowing you to send data to these functions. For example, you can create an endpoint that processes a user form submission. Database or storage changes triggers can respond to changes in your Firestore or Firebase storage services. For example, when an image uploaded in Firebase storage. You will learn more about Firestore in Module 15. Functions can handle user authentication events such as sign up, log in, or deleting user. For example, when a user sign up, create an account, a function might send a welcome email or initialize user-related data in your database. Your functions typically require 2 packages: Firebase Functions and Firebase Admin SDK. In FlutterFlow, these packages and their initialization are automatically added. In many use cases, you may want to write your business logic in the Firebase Cloud Function, and when it's needed, call the function explicitly, where it will be triggering the function. We talked about it, that's on call. Here's a snippet that shows how you can write a function that can be called. You look at the snippet, it's a JavaScript code, fairly simple to read. To define a function for receiving a request over HTTP, you should call on request on HTTPS on function SDK. When you use on request, it means it triggered by an HTTP request, typically using post method. It's important to note that by this function name, API function that you see on the screen, we will create an API function endpoint as well. Another trigger is when a change in Firestore is happening. In Firestore, a document is a unit of storage that holds fields and their values. We will dive deep into Firestore in Module 15. However, there is a few triggers in functions related to these document changes. Let's review quickly. On create, triggers when a new document is created. On update, triggers when an existing document is updated. On delete, triggers when a document is deleted. And on write, triggers for any changes to a document, create, update, and delete. Another trigger is an update on storage. For example, when a file upload is successfully completed. Unfinalized triggers when a file is successfully uploaded. Then you get access to the object and their names, paths, and so on. On delete triggers when a file is deleted. On archive triggers when a file is archived in Firebase storage. And on metadata update triggers when the metadata of a file is updated. So metadata is extra information about your asset. Let's check another trigger. Functions can handle user authentication events such as sign in and sign up. On create triggers when a user account is created. Here is a perfect scenario when you want to add extra information that you cannot store in Firebase Authentication to a database, for example, in Firestore. On delete triggers when a user is deleted. All right, so now we've seen all the triggers and the simple code snippet. It's time to go and see a quick demo on how we can use one of these triggers in our application. All right, so far we managed to upload the profile avatar and store it in our app state to show here. But I really want to store the photo URL, this avatar URL, to the user object in Firebase Authentication. The Firebase Authentication user has photo URL property, so we can set that there. Okay, what we can do, we can start by creating a cloud function. You can have access to cloud function in the app builder. Let's add a new function, give it a name. As you can see, we already have the two packages that we discussed added to our function, and we don't also need to do anything else apart from start writing our logic. Before doing this, we need to make sure our cloud function is enabled in Firebase project. Let's go back to the Firebase project and make sure that you are upgrading your pricing plan to Blaze. For the first time, you may not have any billing account. You need to create one and add a credit card. That's a very simple process. But if you already have, you can go ahead and select one. Optionally, you can set a budget where if in some certain thresholds, you will receive an email. And finally, you just need to link this to a cloud billing. And there you go. Now you are upgraded successfully. Now go back to the build and open the function service and get it started. You just don't need to do anything here. Just make sure the functions are properly set up and waiting for your first deployment. All right, back to my cloud function editor in FlutterFlow. You need to know that there are a few cloud function settings, including the memory allocation. Like if you have a heavy or intensive memory consumption function, then you may need to allocate up to 16 gigabytes. So these are gonna cost you. I will leave everything as default for now, but you can change them in each function independently. The required authentication though is important for me because I wanna call this function and make sure that someone who is calling the function is already authenticated. So let's do that. And in this case, we know who is that user and what's the user ID. Since I'm going to write an onCall function, I can also pass a parameter here. So I want to pass my avatar URL, which is going to be an image path. And I will make sure that it's not nullable. There you go. And I will also make sure that this function at the end returns the image path or my avatar URL. If you look at now the boilerplate code, you'll see some boilerplate code is written for you. And as you can see now, I have the functions, HTTPS, and onCall. So that is going to give me a callback with data and context. So let's just copy that to the editor and review. The first thing it says is that the context, like when you are actually calling this function on call, so you have a context with an authentication and user ID. Beautiful. So then, in fact, what I want, I can start writing a variable. In JavaScript, you can do that with const, and you can say user ID, and we know that it's going to be this context of UID. This line, when it says exclamation user ID, that means if there is no user ID, do nothing. And if it is, then continue. The continuing with the data that we are passing, avatar URL. Perfect. And the next thing we want to do here, we just want to call the admin SDK. And here is the admin. The admin SDK gives us more information. For example, we can access to the Firebase services. Here is my auth service. And that's going to be a function. So if I call this function, then I can perform other actions. For example, one of those, if you just check, is update the user. Just find the update user. There you go. And in that user, you just need to pass the UID as the first parameter and the properties. All right, let's do that. If I just press like the P button, I will set all the properties that this user in Firebase Authentication has. And one of them is actually photo URL, as you can see. Beautiful. And it's question mark, which means it could be null. And that's what we know already. So what we're going to do, we're going to just set photo URL to the avatar URL that we are going to pass. Nice. And this function is already a promise, which means we can await for that. And in order to do that, we need to make sure our function is an async function. Beautiful. And at the end, we can just return our avatar URL. Okay, let's see if there's any error. All right, that's beautiful. We also want to do another thing, and that's actually another function. So let me just save this cloud function right now. All right, when we hit the save cloud function, then the deploy button will appear here in this case, and we can start deploying. I'm not going to deploy right now because I want to write another function. Let me just copy an entire code from here and add a new function. Let's rename it to delete user profile. So what we're going to do in this case is that whenever we call this function, so we want to make sure that the photo URL is going to be null in this case. Because when we need that? When we are going to let user to delete their profile. And that's the only change we want to make. Let's save also this function. So in this case, we don't need the avatar URL as well. Let me just delete that. And we don't need to return also anything. All right, that's it. Then let's go and save. And now we are ready to deploy. So as you can see, when you open the deploy, you can either deploy this function that you are now writing or deploy all the functions. If you have more functions that you want to deploy, you can use deploy all. Let's go ahead and deploy all of our functions right now. All right, the deployment is over and functions are fully deployed. Let's see what it means. If I go back to my Firebase dashboard, under the function now I see two functions here, and both of them are triggered by a request, and they are actually in fact on call. All right, let's go back to the FlutterFlow, and let's start by calling these two functions. Here's my profile avatar. Let's go to the action flow editor. We already added two actions here: upload media to Firebase storage, and then set the app state for avatar. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to add another action and search for cloud function. Now you see two functions that you have written. Let's select the set user photo URL, and for the parameter image set, I will just select the widget state uploaded file URL. Beautiful. And then this is now going to set the URL to the Firebase Authentication user object with the photo URL. And if it's already successful, let's do an snack bar and just say photo updated. And if it's not successful, just give a warning. All right. So that's pretty much it right now. So we need to make a few more changes. Let me just close this. We need to fix the delete avatar as well. Let's just open the action flow. We already had these two actions. I'm going to add a new one and search for cloud function and selecting the delete user photo URL. And upon the success, I will just show a message as in a snack bar. And if it's failed, then another snack bar and just showing there is an error. All right. That's it. Now we need to do one more thing. Let me go to the profile avatar component, and in the serial image, the path to load this is gonna be the app state avatar. So what we want to do in this case, we want to make sure that these avatar app state also get the latest update on other devices. Because imagine right now a user is going to log in another platform or another device. Because there is no app state, well, these components show nothing. I will open the action flow editor on the component, and then on initialization, I will add another action to update my app state. And when this component is going to be initialized, we're going to set the avatar of app state with the value of the authenticated user photo URL, which we just set. And that's it. Beautiful. Let's just close. And we are now good to go. Let's go and test it out. All right, reloading my app. So this is the avatar. So there you go. I'm going to delete the avatar in this case. All right, it's deleted. And photo is also deleted. Beautiful. So if I log out now and log in again, all right, and there is no photo right now, which makes sense. So if I go right now, even reset my app state completely, so that we make sure that there is no state here. Let me add a couple of products. And now I can go and upload a new photo. Let's say this one. So after the photo is successfully uploaded, then we see the picture. And we need to see another snack bar. Well, it says photo updated, which means now if I log out again, and if I clear all the state, or maybe log in another device. So then, there you go. I see my photo is already here. Beautiful. Now we actually set photo URL on Firebase Authentication user object. So we stored that, and every time user logged in, they will see their profile avatar. So this is nice. I'm going to make a few changes here. Perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for. I'm going to go and show you one thing in Firebase dashboard before ending this session. This time, if I come back and check my functions in Firebase, you will see that there are some requests coming to these functions. And that's because calling these functions to test out, and also we just test it together. So it means it's working as we expected. Supabase is another backend as a service provider that connects with your FlutterFlow app. You can always head over to supabase.com to learn more about their services, and if you don't have an account, go ahead and create one. To use and integrate with Supabase, you need to add API URL and anon key in the setting and integration section in FlutterFlow. with the integration, you can authenticate user and store and retrieve data from Supabase. You will see about authentication with Supabase in this module, but we're going to talk about the database of Supabase in the next module, module 15. All right, now let's go and open the Supabase and start integrating with our FlutterFlow app. So as you can see right now, I'm in the Supabase website and I already have an account and I can go to my dashboard. I can start a new project as well. Let's go to my dashboard and I'll show you what happens. So I already have one project, but if you don't, for the first time you're coming here, you need to create a new project. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. Let's do that. I'm going to name it our FlutterFlow course. And you need a database password. You can use a password generator here to give you a strong password. And that should be very securely stored somewhere. So make sure you're not revealing this password because everyone can get access to your database. So I'm going to go and add a password here so that I can use later. There we go. And you can check the region. You can select multiple regions, which technically means the services are going to be located on that region. So that's pretty much what it is right now. Let's go and create a project. All right, here it is. This is my project already created. So I need this non-public key. I will copy that and I will go back to my FlutterFlow app. Let's go to setting. And under integration, you will have Supabase. Let's enable and let's paste that. Beautiful. And let's go back. And there is also a project URL. I'm just going to copy that and going back to my FlutterFlow and paste it here. All right, that's it. Let me go back to Supabase before doing anything else to explore a few things together with you. So my project is now up and running. And as you can see, there are multiple services that you can use, including authentication and database. The database in Supabase you will learn in the next module. But what is important that, so the database comes with a schema. And as you can see, there is nothing at this point here. So, and if you go to authentication, you also see the authentication service here. So what we can do right now, there's nothing here that we need to do. I'm going to go back to my FlutterFlow app and then click on a schema to see what happens. And you see when I click on that, it says you haven't created any tables yet. And that's correct. We have not had anything, but our project is pretty much connected. That's it for this video. Let's move on to the next video and see how we can enable authentication with Supabase. Supabase authentication is also almost following the same principle as Firebase authentication. So let's see that in a quick demo. Here is my Supabase dashboard, and I'm going to go to the authentication service here. So if I now open the provider, you will see that there are multiple providers here, and some of them we have seen in Firebase. And if you want to use any of these into your app, you need to follow almost the same step that you need to do also for Firebase. So then there is also an email and password, which is already enabled by default. And you have multiple configuration here. For example, confirm email. If you want to send a confirmation email before signing to user, you can do that from here. You don't need to send a verification from the actions in FlutterFlow. All right, so now this is actually set up and ready. We have one provider at least, and that's email and password. Let's go ahead and use that in FlutterFlow. Here is our application, and we already used this for Firebase authentication. Let's go ahead and change the authentication type now to Supabase. As soon as you change the authentication type, you will see that there are multiple project issues popping up. It's just because we've been using Firebase Auth for many of our actions, and now that doesn't work anymore because we don't have Firebase Auth anymore. All right, let's go ahead and fix them one by one, starting from login. So in fact, if you're doing that only for Supabase for the first time, you need to add an action to sign in. We already had an action here. Let me just delete this action to show you how you can do that. You can add an action, and then this time you need to search for Supabase. And under the Supabase authentication, then you have login, create account, logout, reset password. There you go. So this is the login. Set the email provider, email, and password. So that's it for login. And if I now go back to my create account, you'll see that my actions are fairly following the same thing. So that's the create account for Supabase. We don't have send email verification as you've seen in the action for Supabase. I'm going to delete this. And for forgot password, we also are following the same name as Firebase. So then we're good here. There's other problems as well. And the first one is going to be the property override. Let's go here. Now we're using this email. We need to make sure that this email is actually from the authenticated user of Supabase email. Beautiful. And let me just go and delete the avatar. We're not going to have the storage for this demo, but you can also use Supabase storage. I can quickly show you how you can do that from actions. So for example, in profile avatar, if I open my actions here, we already have upload media to Firebase, right? That's what we need to change right now, because as of now, we don't have Firebase. And then the type is going to be Supabase. And with Supabase, then the configuration is a bit different. Then you need to create a bucket. You need to have an upload folder path here. And also you need to set the policies and rules in Supabase, which are different from the Firebase. So in this case, I'm just going to delete this action. We don't need that right now. Beautiful. So then log out. Let's check that, see if it's working well. It's pretty okay. We do have a log out in Supabase authentication action. And there's one more thing here, and that's our avatar. Okay, let me just go back to profile avatar. And on the spherical image, let's just make sure we don't have anything and just show a placeholder. All right, looks good. There's still one more issue. Let's go and click on that, see what's the issue. There you go. We are now setting an avatar into the app state from photo URL, which that was under the authenticated user in Firebase, but Supabase does not have that. So therefore, we just need to delete this action, and that's it. Now we're ready to test it out. Back to my FlutterFlow desktop app, I will stop and start the app in my simulator in order to make sure that all the necessary dependencies for Supabase is installed properly. All right, there you go. It's back. We're going to go to sign up, and let's sign up with a user. After creating, there you go, we're logging in. And if I go to profile, the email is already here. All right, let's go back to see if the user is created in Supabase dashboard. So I'll go to the users management. Beautiful. And we do have one user here created for us. I would like to test the log out and sign in as well. And voila, everything is working as expected. Enabling backend as a services like Firebase in FlutterFlow is very simple, but there is a lot going on behind the scenes. Let's take a look at generated code. In my generated code under lib, now I have multiple new files and functionalities. Let's start with PubSpec YAML file. There are multiple dependencies added right now, including some packages named as Cloud Functions, or all the Firebase core and other services related to Firebase packages, as well as some functionalities such as sign in with Apple if it's needed to be enabled, and so on and so forth. So you can take a look at that in the PubSpec YAML file. But Now, if I go to my main.dart as an entry point, then the first thing you're seeing, and the most important one probably, is the initializing the Firebase, where you can use it in an entire application. And if I go there, it's in fact calling the Firebase initialize app with all the options and configuration that is necessary. Now you can go to the auth folder. Auth folder is new that is created here. And as you can see, the pages that we created already coming here: create account, forgot password, and login password. We also have Firebase auth folder, which everything related to Firebase is here. Let's take a look at Firebase user provider. So this is going to actually provide base auth user. We're going to take a look at this class shortly. But as you can see right now, you have the fields that you had under user authentication. So we had UID, user ID, email, display name, photo URL, which we even have written a function for that to set it up, as well as the phone number. All right, and then there's other functions as well here, including email verified, refreshing the user in case of updating the profile. All right, so that's all this, but that is actually extending a base auth user. And the base auth user is in fact an abstract class, which is going to define the contract for all of the classes that are going to extend this. All right, that's how it is defined. There's also a couple of utility functions. Like for example, if I go to auth-util, then you see the Firebase Auth Manager. We're going to take a look at that quickly. And then you get the current user, whoever is logged in, email, user ID, display, or photos, and so on. And if I now go to the Firebase Auth Manager, you'll see that the Firebase Auth Manager, in fact, is doing a few more things here, including the functions that we've seen in the actions, such as sign out, delete user, and update email, reset password, and so on. But let's see how this is used. Let's just take one example. Let's open the login page in this case. This is our sign in button where we have some actions on that. All right, if now you take a look at this on press, you see that what it does is just preparing for authentication event, and then it calls the auth manager, which I just showed you, and sign in with email. Then you are passing the email address and obviously the password. And once that is signed in, so then the user is not null and everything is fine, then it's going to redirect you to the product list page. Beautiful. So this is now repeating in other pages as well. If I show you quickly the reset password, here's our send link, which we used in our application. On action that we defined, we just called the reset password with email address. And there you go. There's another folder that is interesting, and that is the backend right now. You see that we have multiple folders. For example, the Firebase folder in this case, which comes with the configuration for initialization that we just checked, and Firebase storage, where if I open that, you'll see that we have the upload data where it uses the Firebase storage instance and just get the path and upload the data and get the download URL. And that's exactly what we are receiving from widget state when you said uploaded URL. All right, that's how it works in the code. And we also use cloud functions, and we define two functions in this case. So these are in the JavaScript part, which I'm going to show you shortly, but this is what we use in the application for calling the functions. And that's a helper, which is helping us to just read the body and the data that we are passing and so on. So these are the two functions, set user and delete user photo URL that we defined. All right, so but where are those functions in the cloud function we've written, the JavaScript one? Those are going to be located under Firebase in the root of application. If you just open that, You will see that you have the custom function right now, and these are the two functions you created, like two literally file here. And if I open that, these are what we have created. So you see these files, but FlutterFlow also handles a few more things here so that you don't need to do yourself. And you remember we actually had the storage rules in FlutterFlow. And there you go. This is the file that when you edit it in FlutterFlow will actually come here. We, in fact, directly managed our storage rules in Firebase in the demo. But what about the uploading data that we had? So that's actually under FlutterFlow. So you're going to have these upload data file and uploaded file, and you see the functions here. For example, selecting the media. That was an action that we used. And as you can see, there are multiple parameters to this function, and you can even select the media source. And that is using an image picker. So image picker library that is helping you for picking the image from camera or from library. All right, that's beautiful. So you have this function. Let's see where we have used this right now. I can actually get a reference. There you go. It's coming here. Let's go up, see, and that's where you can see the action that is opening a button sheet. That was a button sheet we've seen in the app. When we clicked on upload, it shows a button sheet and it shows the gallery and camera. And that's beautiful. So that's what we can see here. Let me just click on this and see where we are using that.